Christie. Thank you so much, Christie Slape from Moms for Liberty. You are an ambassador for the Texas chapter, if I am correct, getting that all accurate. Part of our big effort is talking to moms across the country as we approach the midterms. I can't believe we're already here, right? I can't believe the
Right.
primaries are already here. March
Yes.
3rd is a big day for you out in Texas. You've already been really hitting the ground running, talking to voters, talking to moms. I just kind of want to pick your brain. What are you hearing this election cycle?
Well, one of the things that we do, and thank you for having me. One of the things we do in Moms for Liberty is we unify our members who are like-minded and we educate them on the issues and we empower them to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. So that means that we are at this moment trying to educate them on the races. Number one, how to even find your sample ballot. A lot of people don't even know that that is, a possibility that you can just print your list of your candidates and you can do research on them and take it with you into the polling place. So we're trying to teach them that. But yeah, there are a lot of big races that are happening here in Texas. We did have some huge gains in just in education, parental rights in the last election. Our governor helped to support a lot of candidates running who he knew would be in support of our school choice program, which is called the Texas Education Freedom Accounts. It's been a great way for people to sign up to kind of get out of their zip code school, their public school, and experiment with a new type of education for their child that fits their child's learning. So we were able to elect in the last cycle a lot of elected officials, legislators that were in favor of those school choice efforts and also parental rights. So we're in a good place. And as presidentially, we had a great win. We have a president who absolutely supports parental rights. And so we're thankful for that. So a lot of people in Texas just feel like, oh, we've done everything and life is good. And there's really no urgency to go out and vote in the primary. And so, again, with Moms for Liberty, we are all about educating and we are telling our members and our community, no, you got to get out there and be a part of the process. You get the government that you deserve. If you don't vote and you don't like who ends up winning the primary, well, you missed your opportunity. So we want to make sure that we have candidates come to our meetings, which we've been doing. We have local chapter meetings. So we have several, I guess we have 12, 13 chapters now across Texas. And I've been a chapter chair here in Williamson County. I'm a Texas ambassador now, trying to go into different, well, we have 254 counties, so into as many counties as I can in Texas and try to open new chapters so we can continue educating our Texas citizens on education and parental rights. And we are just doing our best to meet every candidate, talk to them about the issues, have them sign our parent pledge, which is a good tool. In Moms for Liberty, we only endorse in school board races, and that has traditionally been locally, but we do have a state board of education candidate this cycle for the first time, and we are endorsing in that district race. So Carrie Moore is one of our chapter chairs in Nueces County. So that's been a neat thing to be able to explore that on a statewide level.
Snag her.
Yeah.
You and I were talking before the break, and it's if you've covered politics at all, you just know that there's just not a great turnout when it comes to midterms, right? And that
Right.
ends up, any way you slice it, to favor the Democrats. And it's an uphill battle for you right now. So I want to push you on that, see what you're doing differently.
Yes.
And then you talked a lot about education. That was a big deal in the general election 2 years ago. So was immigration. Are both of those still really big issues in Texas?
Yes. So to your point, just about the turnout in the primaries, we are seeing the Democrats are in full force and they are showing up to vote in the primary. What is interesting is that we've seen in the past, because Texas has open primaries, which we're trying to remedy that. I'm not a fan of that at all. but we've had Democrats voting in our Republican primaries for years because they like to interfere in the Republican primary in order to kind of water down our results. So we have a weaker Republican candidate in the general, and then that allows the Democrats to have a bit of a stronghold in those general races. So interestingly, this cycle we're seeing lots more Democrats voting in the Democrat primary. So I'm not exactly sure what that means. We'll find out, I guess, when the election is over on March 3rd. But the Republicans are slow going. Now, traditionally, Republicans like to vote on election day. And so maybe we'll have a big surge there next Tuesday after early voting and on election day. So, we're hoping to see that happen. Yes, big issues in Texas are still the border, immigration, and education. And I'll start with education just because that is our mission in Moms for Liberty. We are a parental rights and education organization, but we do realize there are a lot of big issues that have overlaps into our mission. So I feel like it's relevant to discuss them. Education wise, we have over 5 million students, Texas students, that are in public education. And as a mom who grew up in the public education system, I had all 4 of my children in public education. We want strong public schools. I have every reason to believe that public schools can be strong and can be helpful, and it's great to have an elementary school in your neighborhood that's thriving and that is teaching kids and the kids are thriving academically. But what we've seen over the last several years is that the public schools have gone way left. The progressive education mantra, that we got your kids, we're good, we're going to keep them locked in our school all day, keep the parents out, and we'll educate them, it'll all be fine. And kids are learning social emotional learning, their data is being collected, they aren't thriving in literacy, reading, and our school district calls it literacy and numeracy. But in math, they're not successful, and we have
Well, the
kids.
scores show it. The scores show it. It's
Yes,
there's no one, even if we had a panel on today,
yes,
I can't find someone who will tell you that kids are doing well in school today. I can't. I can't.
that's
And
right.
I
So
have
we
my
need
kids in public school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great. So, yeah. So that's why we need competition. America thrives on capitalism and competition. And, there are some opposers to school choice that say, oh, it's just a money making scheme for all of these, companies and different private schools. But really, as parents, we see that if our children are being indoctrinated in public schools, well, we want options, but not everybody can afford that. So, our Texas state passed a law, the governor signed it last May, giving an opportunity for people to apply for these Texas education savings accounts, the Texas Education Freedom Account, I believe is what they've named it. And we have had a surge of people. I think 60,000 people the first day applied, and they're still taking applications until March 17th. And then it'll be a lottery. The priority is on children with special needs, but there is an opportunity for other to be a part of that. So it'll be the biggest school choice program of any state in the country. And we're excited, but we want to continue to elect people to our state legislature and to all of our statewide offices that support parents having the choice of educating their child wherever their child learns the best. So there's that. And then as far as the immigration and border issues, yeah, during the Biden administration, we had people flooding over the border into our state. And honestly, as a mom with 4 kids and 3 of those are daughters, I have been fearful. I mean, not to the point where I won't leave my home, but fearful of who exactly is in our state. And, when is this going to stop? When will I feel like my kids can drive around and hang out with their friends in public and not, possibly be one of those terrible stories on the news? So we sealed our border thanks to President Trump, and in Texas as well. We've made great efforts, and we're hoping that stays solid and that we can get the criminal illegal aliens out of our state. There are a lot of children in our public schools that are not legal citizens of the United States of America, and they are being educated in our schools. and it is, definitely taking
Yeah, how do
the
you
back.
handle that? Because that kinda
Yeah.
that tugs
Well,
at you, doesn't it? Like
it does because, I mean, I believe every
yeah,
child needs to have an education, but
absolutely.
there's a way to do that that is proper. And when people come into our country illegally and then they expect for their children to be educated, um, the taxpayers are paying for the education and healthcare for these families and children, and is putting a strain on the education system and the funding for our schools. So we have a lot of work to do.
That's a tough one. We've done, some special series, and I traveled to Alabama to some small towns where there was even little kids getting dropped off, and I watched it. They were getting dropped off in diapers going into kindergarten, and they couldn't speak English, and as a mother, that was one of the most challenging stories I've ever had to cover because I understand how this child needs access to an education, but then I
Mhm.
had teachers crying in the hallways because they couldn't communicate with these children, and they had 30, 40 kids in their class, and I just think it's you're putting the most vulnerable in the toughest situation. You're not giving
Mhm.
them tools, you're not giving them access to educate these people, and it's like nobody was winning is what I witnessed. So I think my
Yeah.
question to you is then what can be done from a policy perspective? That's something obviously that you're pushing for, right?
Mm.
And we can all watch the headlines, but what policies are we looking at in states such as Texas to
Well,
alleviate that pressure?
I wish I had all the answers. I do know there is a push in the Republican Party, resolutions that are going to be going through to the precinct conventions and then on to the state convention, where Texas citizens are not wanting Texas to pay for the education of children whose parents and who are not legal citizens. And I know that that is kind of controversial. There will be people on both sides of the issue,
Yeah.
but we are paying our hard-earned tax dollars. We pay high property taxes in Texas, and I mean, one of our priorities is to get our property taxes lowered or, removed altogether.
I
And
saw that.
so we're already being taxed out of our homes. People, I mentioned earlier, people in the Austin area are moving out into my county, Williamson County,
Yeah.
because it's more affordable. Well, people in Williamson County who used to be able to afford to live here are now moving out more rural so that their homes can be more affordable. So we're just sort of in this vicious cycle that needs to be under control. And I know I have heard our governor and lieutenant governor, they have a plan for how we're going to reduce taxes. We also have a push to eliminate taxpayer funded lobbying, which is a big issue. I know in the Republican Party right now, and has been actually for several cycles. But we we Texans cannot pay more taxes, and the taxes that we do pay, we don't want going towards lobbyist organizations like the Texas Association of School Boards and the Texas Association of School Administrators, and they send their lobbyists down to our state capitol and they lobby against our values. So we really do need to reform in the taxation of our citizens.
Okay, so I've been following some of the races, and specifically the one that's making headlines, and you know this as well, is the Talarico Crockett race. And
Mhm.
you and I were talking off camera about how you don't think that she'll have a chance when she gets to the general, but you do hear different platforms that
Mhm.
are getting more attention now more than ever that would say that you actually should be taxed more. And so that's why I'm there. It's almost like the gap is getting wider, and Texas is a good example of that
Mhm.
because the beliefs are so far apart. Do you agree with me?
I do. I do think we are like in polar opposites when it
Yeah.
comes to policy and just morals and values and views of, the foundation of America. It's so bizarre, but the race that you're referring to is our US Senate race,
Uh-huh.
and the incumbent is John Cornyn. Some people love him. Other people, particularly the grassroots, are not fans of Cornyn. And our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who's done a great job as Attorney General, is running against John Cornyn in the primary. And then we also have Wesley Hunt, who is also throwing his hat, who threw his hat in the race. So it is an interesting race. So that's the Republican side. And then on the Democrat side, we have Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico. James Talarico was actually my state rep. I believe he got elected in 2018, and I was not paying attention to politics. I have 4 kids, and my kids were young then. And boy, that election just went past me so fast, and I didn't really know anything about the legislature at that point. So looking back, I'm thankful that he does not represent me, and we now have a Republican who represents our area. But James Talarico is he's a smooth talker, and he is very convincing. He just has something about him. He has a little schoolboy charm, but he's on our Texas education K through 12 committee in the House, and he's taught school for 2 years, and he puts himself out as being the authority on all things education. And he actually taught, again, 2 years middle school, but I can see right through him. He speaks about the Bible in terms, and just it's bizarre. He's, a student of seminary, and he's very deceptive, we'll say that. So there are a lot of Christians actually coming out of the woodwork who normally don't talk about politics, who are posting online about him and how he's being very deceptive and misrepresenting the Bible and Christianity. So I'm like really watching that race, because I care that our Texans are not being deceived into thinking that he is a great candidate. Again, Jasmine Crockett is very much the opposite of my values. And so I'm keeping an eye on her too, because whichever one of those wins and goes into the general, they're going to need a tough competitor on the Republican side to represent Texas.
I'm so fascinated. We actually reached out to the Talarico team to have him on the show, and he said he was too busy ahead of the primaries. But
Yeah.
watching his trajectory, and if any political junkie is just fascinated, and Texas is always interesting. The state always has it, but this year in particular, I do think, especially for a midterm, there's a lot going on. Christy, there's a lot going on.
Yes.
What else was, aside from that Senate race, are you really you have your finger, a pulse on another race? What else do you think is really influential?
I think our Attorney General race is a big race. Obviously, it's statewide, with Attorney General Ken Paxton leaving that office, or now running for the U.S. Senate. That leaves this opening. And so we have our great Texas Senator Mays Middleton, who threw his hat in the ring early, very early, saying that he was going to run for Attorney General. And he signed our Moms for Liberty parent pledge. He has been a champion for all things to protect girls in sports, protect women and girls in our bathrooms and public spaces. He has filed a taxpayer-funded lobbying bill, against taxpayer-funded lobbying for multiple legislative sessions. And so we've really seen him be a strong conservative advocate for Texans. So we were excited to see him file to run for AG. And then we had, some other people run. Chip Roy, who was a U.S. congressman. He's well liked in parts of Texas. Aaron Wright, I want to make sure I say his name correctly. He is running. He's worked for Senator Cruz. I met him when he was the chief of staff for Senator Cruz. And he has the endorsement of Ken Paxton, and I believe Senator Cruz endorsed Chip Roy. It's interesting. And then there's one more that I'm forgetting. I have my list right here. Let's see. Joan Huffman is also running. And I don't know a lot about her, but she kind of stays behind the scenes. And, you go, girl. If you want to run for Attorney General, great. But there was a debate recently in Dallas. It was hosted by Allie Beth Stuckey, and it was awesome. I don't know. Did you see that?
I didn't see that. No, I didn't see it.
It was great. It was like a candidate forum debate, and it was very enlightening. I don't think it changed anybody's mind on who they were, supporting, but that is definitely the race to watch.
Okay,
And
so
if I can just add, I'm
yeah.
sorry, the reason that Attorney General is so important is because, you know, we have a history now, especially with Ken Paxton, just suing the Biden administration and making sure that Texans are not forced to follow any kind of federal rules or legislation that, you know, goes against our Texas values. And of course, now we have Trump in the presidency, so that hasn't been as much of an issue. But a lot of our new Texas laws that have been passed, uh, the enforcement mechanism is through the attorney general. So we want to make sure we have an attorney general that obviously knows the law and who will stand up for the rights of Texans, and, you know, especially parents, when we, you know, if we have to file a complaint with the attorney general's office because a male, or maybe you know, a male wearing a skirt who thinks he's a female is in the female bathroom or locker room of a government office, we can file a complaint on that government entity. In this case, like if it's the Capitol or in our, you know, local city hall, we can file a complaint, and we want the attorney general to take us seriously and follow up on that and do the investigation. So the
Well, I mean,
AG race
Paxton
is important.
Paxton
Yeah.
has a robust, obviously, political history, but he didn't, you know, make a name for himself. That's probably also part of why he is popular in Texas.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, you know, what are you most excited about with these midterms? Because, you know, like I said, it is kind of an uphill battle for Republicans.
Mhm.
You don't have, you know, your president on the top of the ballot. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, people, like you said, they rest on their laurels. Republicans typically don't turn out on midterms. But I want to leave on a high note. What are you energized about?
Well, I think I'm just energized because we are already moving forward in a good direction in our state as far as conservative policy goes. We still have a, you know, a lot to fix, I would say, but we have some great candidates running. We even have quite a few Moms for Liberty members that are running for different offices for, you know, reasons of their own. And again, we don't endorse in races other than in school board races, but it's just great to see citizens engaging in civil discourse and putting themselves out there to run for office. We do know that, you know, there's the big machine, whether it's education or just you know, groups that have these huge PACs with a lot of money. It's frustrating because it feels like, if, you know, if you feel called by God and you file to run for an office and it becomes your life for the months that you're running, sometimes you feel like you can't have a chance. So I, you know, I just feel like everyone who wants to run for office and can articulate well what their positions are, they can at least get out there and educate the public on the issues and drive more engagement from our communities. And hopefully, by the end of the primary, we'll have the best candidates for each party. And then we can really go to work knocking on doors and getting out the vote for our chosen candidate in the general election.
Well, Christy, I'm grateful that you're joining us. I mean, Moms for Liberty has really, I mean, you guys are growing every day. It's fascinating to watch. So thank you for joining us, and good luck
Thank you.
on March 3rd. Keep us posted. And of course, we hope that you come back.
Thank you so much. I'd love to.
Thank you. Nancy, we were talking off camera. As you know, Raising America is just canvassing the United States. We're talking to moms across the country, especially as these primaries pop up. And you're in Texas, so you're right up against the wire here. So, Nancy Thompson, you are the founder and executive director of Mothers for Democracy and Mothers Against Greg Abbott. Did I get all of that right?
Correct.
Okay, so you are really also canvassing the state of Texas, talking to mothers, talking to parents. I mean, midterms, I would argue, are just as important, if not more important, than the general election. It's because there's so much at stake in the midterms, right? What are you hearing?
It is interesting because what I'm hearing from families is completely different than what Texas Republicans are currently running on. What I'm hearing from families is that they can't afford healthcare, they can't afford housing, they can't afford food. They haven't had a raise of their minimum wage in years and years and years, if ever. And also that they're really worried about the AI data centers that are being built in their communities. There's a lot of talk and worry about water and a lot about, just water mitigation along the Texas coast. And then the aquifers being basically dry because Facebook and Meta and some of these other companies are coming in and building AI data centers. And they're coming in and building these huge AI data centers that are sucking up all the water in their communities and only returning on investment about 12 jobs. So,
It's funny. Someone told me once that every time you type into like Chat GPT, it's a bottle of water.
yeah,
And
it's
that,
like boiling, like, a small thing for pasta every
stop.
single time you log into ChatGPT.
So what I'm hearing is that you're saying that Republicans, well, first of all, and even Republicans admit that during a midterm, they are at a disadvantage. There's usually very low turnout. When there's low turnout, it's usually just Democrats. Google it if you don't agree with me, whatever, the numbers are there. So, but what I'm also hearing from you is that the Republicans are out of touch to what you're hearing moms and parents are most concerned about.
100%. I'm going to tell you, they are running on expanding these AI data centers everywhere. And what they don't get is that they're hated by the communities everywhere they're trying to expand. So, what the regular Texans don't know is that Facebook created a PAC, and this Meta PAC is funding Texas Republicans hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to pass laws in this next cycle, this next legislative cycle, that will further expand AI data centers being built in Texas with no accountability, very low taxes that will be collected for the communities that they're building on. And this is going to result in total devastation of our water tables, as well as like tax dollars going back into the communities.
Okay, so you're thinking that there's going to be some big shifts in Texas, that it's going to come out. Maybe we might see a blue wave there. And tell me more.
Well, I think that we are definitely going to see a blue wave because, I mean, for example, just a couple nights ago on the State of the Union, the president saying everything's great, America's never been better. That is not what we're feeling, because I know quite a few moms. I mean, even I run a really large Mothers Against Greg Abbott Facebook group, Mothers for Democracy Facebook group. And in the Facebook group, there are moms that are losing their jobs and parents that are losing their jobs every single day, and they're talking about it. So then to have, the voice of the Republicans saying everything is fine, but that's not what we feel. We know everything is not fine. We go to the grocery store, we spend money on groceries, the same type of groceries that we bought a year ago are now, several times more expensive. Our grocery bills are more expensive. The cost of our property taxes is more expensive. The price of just everyday living is going up, but we're being told that the pricing is going down. But we see it with our own eyes. We see it with our own eyes in our own pocketbooks. And the fact is that our lifestyles and our bills are increasing, and we are being gaslighted by the Republican Party.
Okay, so they're not hearing you. They're not hearing what you're saying, and we've talked to a lot of families who feel like an affordability issue is really front and center. And women and homemakers they make 87% of the consumer decisions for their families. So they're the ones who know that the prices are going up. So are you hearing from candidates that represent that viewpoint?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, most of the Democratic candidates are running on affordability. If I were to pick what the top issue that candidates across Texas are running on, Democratic candidates, they're running on affordability. All of them. Just the price of everything is too expensive, from our grocery bills to our electric bills, which have gone drastically up since Storm Uri hit Texas. And then, Greg Abbott gave a lot of tax breaks and stuff to the energy companies. We are now paying for those energy bills of the grid going down in Texas. We are
so funny.
by that.
People don't associate that, by the way.
Yeah.
People don't always associate energy with politics, and they're very much intertwined in states.
100%. Yep.
And I just don't think people realize that.
Yeah.
So affordability, I would say, is by far the biggest issue that we've come across, and also education. A lot of folks are concerned about education, and because they're looking at their third grader who can't read.
It's a combination of a lot of things for as far as education, especially here in Texas. I mean, the schools in Texas have been underfunded for such a long time that now, like our schools, like for example, in my school district, which is Austin ISD, is closing down 10 schools next year.
Well, okay, so to play devil's advocate, you'll have the other side. It's not a panel, so I'll be the panelist. You'll have folks who say that we are throwing more and more money at schools and it's not doing anything. What would you say to that?
I would challenge them about that because I don't think, I mean, it's easy to say that they're throwing more and more money towards schools when they don't account for a few things. We need to account for population changes in the schools. You know, I mean, you might see more money being thrown at schools, but it has the population of students increased. If the number of students increase, of course, we have to throw more money at these schools. The other thing that we're not seeing is how little funding is coming from other areas. And also just like the attacks on the school districts and stuff. For example, I'm going to give you a sample. They just passed vouchers in the state of Texas, okay? So you have vouchers just passed in the state of Texas, and if somebody chooses to send their kid to a private school, they're going to get $10,000 for that child to go to a private school. But if you have a family, you have one kid in private school and one kid in public school, the public school is only going to be given $6,260 to go to public school. But your private school kid is going to get a $10,000 voucher.
Okay,
now,
so
where's the equality in that?
Okay.
You know? So that's really, I mean, that $10,000 voucher is taking more than the cost of what it would take to pay for it.
Okay, so you could argue it's a well-intentioned program, but it's not playing out well, is what you're saying, because it's incentivizing kids to go to a private school.
Yeah, it's just incentivizing the kids to go to a private school. But the reason that they want these kids to go to private schools is because a lot of these private schools are actually for-profit private schools, you know, and the programs that run the voucher programs are run by Republicans and their donors. Like the largest donor to Greg Abbott donated $12 million to him total. It was Jeff Yaz. Well, Jeff Yaz owns a company that manages school vouchers. So he invested $10 million in Greg Abbott and vouchers and getting vouchers passed in Texas. But his return on investment is going to be in the billions.
Wow. So what else are you unhappy with when you look at what the governor has done?
I mean, you know, we could be here all day. So there's just a lot of things.
Okay, so I'll narrow it down. I'll narrow it down to, because we're talking about just families, parents, and we've talked affordability, and you've talked about education. I would probably ask you about healthcare, because that's probably somewhere that you're hearing from parents that they're incredibly concerned about. It's very expensive.
Yeah, let's talk about his impact on healthcare. We're dealing with a Republican Party that doesn't really understand the overall big issues in healthcare. I mean, when you want to study healthcare in the state of Texas, it really is the story of Texas healthcare deserts. And what I mean by deserts, there are several dozen counties across Texas that do not have hospitals, that do not have urgent cares, where they would have to travel, you know, 2 hours to get a cast on if they broke their arm. And even worse than that are how many hospitals have maternal care in their hospital. Well, there's a lot of hospitals that don't even, nobody can give birth in those hospitals. They don't allow for that.
Okay, so sounds like access is one of your biggest concerns.
Absolutely. So it's access to healthcare. Also, Texas is 50th in mental health care, and they know that they're 50th in mental health care. Texas should be passing the Medicaid expansion, and they haven't passed it because they're still doing it to Obama, you know? I mean, grudges run a really long time, but these are my tax dollars. Every Texan's tax dollars go into this Medicaid expansion. They're going into a kitty, and we're never seeing not a single cent of that money that we put into that kitty.
Okay.
Yeah, and it could, like, if we did do the Medicaid expansion, that would equate to over 1 million Texans having health insurance, which would
Okay,
be
so that would be
amazing.
your biggest goal.
Yeah.
So that would be your biggest goal is expanded healthcare, more access. You want to now, I will admit the schooling issue, I'm going to come back to it because you also need to justify having additional funds sent to schools, right?
Without a doubt, we have to. Yeah, we have to. And it's a lot about how the schools get funding.
Right.
So it's about this, and it's all a trick and play of like words and like policies, how schools get funded.
Well, and the federal funding is not going to be there, right? There's going to be some shifts in that. It's going to have to come from the state. So I wonder if there's a plan, especially with some of the folks who are running for office in these midterms, is how are you going to financially support these schools without the Department of Education?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky here in Texas. We have something called the Permanent School Fund. And the Permanent School Fund is where they take public land across Texas. And if there's oil fields in this public land or energy fields in the public land, they can tax those energy companies. And the public education school fund actually has millions of dollars in it to help fund public schools. But Republicans don't want to also use that money. And
Okay.
we also have something called the Rainy Day Fund. Well, the Rainy Day Fund is about to meet its maximum of the amount of money the Rainy Day Fund can have. And so we're going to have a lot of extra money coming from possibly from the Rainy Day Fund that should be allocated towards education. So we do, and we have billions of dollars in there. I mean, it's not a joke. There's a lot of money in that Rainy Day Fund.
Right.
And it would be like $28 billion that we have in there by the end of this year. So there's a lot of money and it's just not allocated wisely, but while it's not being allocated wisely, we have Republicans that are running saying, oh, Texas is great for business. Texas is great for that. Texas is great for this. But if Texas is so great, why are we at the bottom of everything that really matters to Texas families? We're at the bottom of education. We're at the bottom of healthcare. We're at the bottom of mental health. We're at the bottom of maternity care, maternal care, and infant care. And that just needs to stop. We are not taking care of the backbone of families, which are women and their children. We are not taking care of them and making sure that they get everything that they need so we can create a stronger Texas.
Yeah, we talk about that on the show a lot about how moms are not working like they used to be. And it's not if you don't want to work, then you shouldn't. But if you do want to, you should have the resources to go back out and enter the workforce. We talked a lot about universal childcare. Is that a topic that we've heard from candidates in Texas? Because we've seen it in other states.
Yeah, it absolutely has come up. Universal childcare is essential. And that's another type of desert that we have here in Texas. We just don't have enough childcare facilities across Texas.
Oh, I want to end on sort of a really I don't know, it's a hot topic, and it's one that the governor's been hot on, is gender and sports. And I just want to see where you stand on that issue and how you feel about it.
Well, first of all, this is how I feel about it. It's crazy to make such a big deal that affects so very few Texans. So there is less than 1% of the population in which this affects. Uh, um, Most of the population is really worried about healthcare, but this actually really affects less than 1% of the population across Texas. So I feel like he's wasting a lot of time and resources on creating an enemy to cause us all to be divided and hate one another. And then you turn around and I ask people, well, how many people do you know that are transgender and are in sports? Like, and nobody can really answer that because it's not a thing. We don't really, it's 1% of the population. It's such a tiny, tiny amount that we shouldn't be um, turning, we shouldn't be allowing the governor to just completely dehumanize a small, and bully a small percent of our population based on his fear mongering, in which he feels it results in him getting more people to vote for him.
Yeah, interesting. That's really interesting. Okay, so Nancy, before I let you go, I want to get your prediction. I mean, over the next few months, we'll be watching states. I mean, we'll be watching campaigns and watching the ads. What is your prediction in Texas? Do you think there really is going to be a big shift in, I don't know, is there going to be a big blue wave?
Okay, so I do think a couple things. So here we go. I went out to dinner, or actually not dinner. I went out to lunch with a friend from the Texas Democratic Party, and she said, we need to quit letting everybody think that we're just going to go in there and take over everything, because we're not going to win every race, right?
Yeah,
We're just
true.
not going to. So I think instead of
Texas,
saying
right?
we're going to have a blue wave in Texas, we're going to say we're going to elect some Democrats. Okay. So I think, honestly, I think we're going to elect some Democrats. And I think that Democrats are finally going to show up to vote. At least I hope that they do. I think that they finally going to get clued in and they're going to show up to vote. And I do feel that there is a very subtle shift on the ground where there are some moderates, independents, and moderate Republicans who are not part of the cult that are saying, whoa, holy cow, we're turning into a fascist country. We need to really consider voting for Democrats. But it's also going to count on Democrats being front and center and running on the right thing. And the right thing is that when you are running across the state of Texas, we need to be running for Texans. We need to be running to make everyday Texans' lives better. And that means healthcare, education. That means increasing their wages. That means lowering their cost and making life more affordable. That means really making these energies accountable for the mistakes that they made on the grid. That means a lot more action and focus being drawn to the billionaires that are funding the Republicans to manipulate everyday Texans and their votes, and getting everyday Texans to vote against their best interests. So we all have got to come together as Texans to vote on the right thing for the majority of us, and not just the 1%, which is the billionaires. Because the last time I looked, they're not worried about their health care. They're not worried about how much money they're making. They're not worried about the price of their property taxes, but we are. The rest of us are. And there's more of us than there are billionaires, and we all have got to start fighting for each other.
Wow. Nancy, it was fascinating speaking with you. I'm so grateful for you. As I mentioned to our listeners, Mothers for Democracy and Mothers Against Greg Abbott. And you'll be probably going across the state talking to moms and parents. So we hope to have you back. And good luck watching what plays out in Texas. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.